Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading over to Jammu and Kashmir in India.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and you might know it for like its stunning landscapes,
Yeah, beautiful area,
but
though.
we're going a little deeper. We're going to be diving into the region's DNA
Wow.
to uncover clues about ancient human migration, and our guide for this journey
Okay.
is an intriguing academic paper that uses cutting-edge genetic analysis to challenge
Nice.
some long-held assumptions about how humans moved across continents.
So like migration patterns.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
It's titled Ancient Human Migrations to and Through Jammu Kashmir, India Were Not of Males Exclusively.
So they're looking at the women.
Yeah, they're looking at kind of the other side of it.
Interesting.
And it uses mitochondrial DNA to paint a whole new picture of the past.
Yeah, that's fascinating how they can use that to kind of get a different perspective.
Yeah, so before we go any further, I think we need to break down this whole mitochondrial DNA thing.
Okay.
For our listener, it's not exactly something we talk about over dinner every day.
Right. Definitely not a common topic.
Yeah, you know.
So basically, mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA for short,
Okay.
is like a separate set of genetic instructions
Oh.
found inside the powerhouses of our cells, the mitochondria.
Yeah.
And unlike our regular DNA, which is a mix of our parents' genes,
Yeah.
mtDNA is passed down directly from mother to child, generation after generation.
Oh, wow.
So think of it like a secret code that only mothers can pass on.
So it's like a genetic breadcrumb trail leading back through time, but only following the mothers.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And why is this so useful for studying ancient migrations?
Well, because by tracking these maternal lineages, we can trace the movements of women throughout history.
Hmm.
And it gives us a whole new perspective on migration patterns. You know, one that often gets overlooked
Oh,
when we focus solely on, say, historical records or archaeological findings, which tend to emphasize male activities.
I see. It's like we've been reading only half the story. Right.
And now we're finally getting the other half, thanks to this mtDNA.
Exactly. And this study focuses on Jammu and Kashmir, right?
Right.
What makes this region so special in terms of migration?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, Jammu and Kashmir, it's uniquely situated at a crossroads nestled in the Himalayas.
Okay.
It's been a potential corridor for migration between India, Eurasia, and Northeast Asia for centuries.
Wow.
The region is incredibly diverse with various ethnic groups and languages,
Really?
reflecting its complex history as a meeting point for different cultures.
So it's not just a beautiful landscape, but also a melting pot of human history etched in the very genes of its people.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So what did the researchers find in this study?
Well, they found that the mtDNA diversity in the Jammu and Kashmir population is far greater than previously thought.
Huh.
They discovered 19 novel maternal subhaplogroups.
Hold on. Novel subhaplogroups. Could you explain what those are? It sounds like we're uncovering hidden branches on the human family tree.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, good. So imagine the human family tree,
Yeah.
but instead of names, it's filled with these genetic markers called haplogroups.
Okay.
Each haplogroup represents a distinct branch of our ancestry, tracing back to a common maternal ancestor.
Oh, okay.
Now, these novel subhaplogroups they found are like discovering new twigs on those branches, lineages previously unknown to science.
So it's like they're adding detail to the map of human history.
Yes.
Revealing connections we didn't even know existed.
Right.
And what do these new subhaplogroups tell us about the migrations in and out of Jammu and Kashmir?
They tell us that the story is far more complex than previously thought.
Okay.
For a long time, the dominant theory was that migrations, especially after the last ice age, were primarily driven by men,
Yeah.
through conquests and expansions.
Right. The classic image of warriors and conquerors spreading their genes across the land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this study challenges that assumption. The sheer diversity of these mtDNA lineages, particularly the presence of haplogroups typically found in regions far beyond India's borders, suggests that women were actively involved in these migrations as well.
So it wasn't just a one-way street of men marching in and conquering. It was more of a dynamic exchange with women playing a vital role in shaping the genetic landscape of the region.
Precisely. And this raises some fascinating questions about the nature of these migrations.
Like what?
Were women traveling with families as part of trading caravans, or were there other factors at play?
Wow.
The mtDNA evidence suggests that women weren't just passive bystanders, but active participants in these ancient journeys.
Wow. This is already changing my whole perspective on how we view ancient migrations.
And we're just getting started.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's delve deeper.
This is where things get even more intriguing.
Oh, great.
Remember how we were talking about those novel subhaplogroups?
Right.
Well, the researchers found a significant number of lineages that are typically associated with regions outside of India.
Oh, really?
It's like finding pieces of a European or Central Asian puzzle right here in the heart of Jammu and Kashmir.
Wait, so we're not just talking about ancient Indian lineages.
No.
There's a whole other layer of genetic diversity coming from outside the subcontinent.
Exactly. And it's not just a few isolated cases.
Huh.
Over a third of the samples studied carried these non-Indian haplogroups, which suggests something more than just brief encounters or trading contacts.
Okay, so that really challenges the idea of Jammu and Kashmir simply being a corridor for migration, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like the region played a much more active role, perhaps even as a place where different groups settled and interacted over generations.
You're getting it.
Okay, good.
The researchers suggest that Jammu and Kashmir might have served as a more permanent settlement for some of these groups, a place where they mixed with the local population, exchanged ideas, and, of course, genes.
It makes you think about what life must have been like back then.
Yeah.
Imagine all these different cultures coming together in this mountainous region, creating a vibrant mix of languages, traditions, and beliefs.
The paper dives into some specific examples of these foreign haplogroups.
Okay.
They found lineages like R0, which is common in West Eurasia,
Okay.
and W, which is prevalent in parts of Europe and the Near East and West Asia.
So we're talking about connections to regions thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
Were there any surprises in these findings? Anything that really stood out?
Well, one particularly interesting discovery was a novel subhaplogroup called W6E.
W6E.
Yeah, it's defined by a specific genetic marker that had never been documented before.
Wow, a completely new subhaplogroup.
I know.
Does that mean that some of these lineages might have actually evolved unique characteristics within Jammu and Kashmir, creating branches of the human family tree that are not found anywhere else?
That's a very real possibility.
Wow.
And it just highlights how much we still have to learn about the complexities of human migration and genetic diversity.
Yeah.
Each new study seems to uncover more layers, more intricate connections than we previously imagined.
It's mind-boggling to think about, isn't it?
It is.
These tiny genetic markers passed down through generations
Yeah.
can reveal so much at our ancient past, connecting us to people and places we never thought possible.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about those Northeast Asian haplogroups,
Okay.
A, C, D, and F.
Okay.
These lineages are typically found in populations from regions like Tibet, China, and Mongolia.
Huh.
Their presence in Jammu and Kashmir suggests connections to the East as well.
So we have evidence of genetic exchange, not just with the West, but also with the East.
Exactly.
It really paints a picture of Jammu and Kashmir as this incredible crossroads, a meeting point for people from all directions.
Precisely. And when we consider the region's historical context, this genetic mixing makes a lot of sense. Remember the Silk Road, that ancient network of trade routes that spanned Asia for centuries?
Yeah, the Silk Road.
Jammu and Kashmir was right in the middle of it all, serving as a vital link between East and West.
Ah, the Silk Road. I can almost picture those caravans laden with silks, spices, and precious goods,
Yeah.
winding their way through the mountains, bringing with them not just exotic wares, but also their genes and stories.
And it wasn't just trade that facilitated these connections.
Okay.
The study mentions various historical migrations and invasions, from Persian empires to Arab conquests,
Oh.
each potentially leaving their genetic mark on the population of Jammu and Kashmir.
So it wasn't always a peaceful exchange of ideas and goods.
Unfortunately, human history is full of conflict and upheaval,
Right.
and these events inevitably leave their traces both in the archaeological and in our DNA.
Yeah.
But what's remarkable is that despite these tumultuous periods, the genetic diversity of Jammu and Kashmir has persisted,
Huh.
creating this rich tapestry that we see today.
It's like the region has this incredible resilience, absorbing these different influences and weaving them into its own unique identity.
Exactly, and that's what makes this study so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about tracing lines on a map or listing haplogroups.
Right.
It's about understanding the human stories behind these migrations. The motivations, the challenges, the triumphs, and the lasting impacts on the people who call this region home.
Okay, so we've talked about the diversity of these lineages and how they connect Jammu and Kashmir to different parts of the world. But how do we actually know when these migrations happened?
Right.
Is there a way to put a time frame on these events?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into the fascinating world of coalescence ages.
Coalescence ages, refresh my memory. What are those again?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Every lineage, every branch on that human family tree eventually traces back to a single common ancestor.
Yeah.
The coalescence age is an estimate of when that common ancestor lived.
So it's like using DNA as a time machine, peering back through generations to pinpoint when these different lineages
You
diverged.
got it. And what's intriguing is that the coalescence ages for some of the non-Indian haplogroups in Jammu and Kashmir don't quite match up with what we would expect based on their origins.
Wait, what do you mean they don't match up?
Well, let's take haplogroup W as an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's typically associated with Europe and is thought to have originated there.
Yeah.
But the estimated coalescence age for W in Jammu and Kashmir suggests that this lineage might have actually diverged earlier than its supposed arrival in Europe.
So are you saying that Jammu and Kashmir could be the origin point for some of these lineages that later spread to other parts of the world? It's mind-blowing.
It's certainly a possibility that the researchers raise. It challenges the traditional view of migration as a one-way flow from west to east
Right.
and suggests a much more dynamic and multi-directional exchange of genes and cultures.
Wow, this completely changes our understanding of how these ancient populations interacted and moved across the globe. It's like the pieces of the puzzle are shifting before our very eyes.
And that's the beauty of scientific discovery. New evidence emerges,
Yeah.
old assumptions are challenged, and our understanding of the past evolves.
This is also fascinating, but I have to admit, it's also a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much information, so many connections, so many possibilities.
You're right, it can be a lot to take in. But let's focus on the big picture for a moment. What's the most significant takeaway from all of this?
I think the most important point is that this study completely flips the script on how we think about ancient migrations,
Yeah.
especially the role of women. It's not just about adding names to the history books.
Right.
It's about recognizing the profound influence that women had in shaping the genetic and cultural landscape of the world.
Absolutely. And this is where we delve into the deeper implications of these findings. So we were talking about how these findings challenge the idea that Jammu and Kashmir was just a migration corridor.
Right, like just a place people pass through.
Exactly. And the paper highlights this by looking at what they call population expansion.
Okay, population expansion. So like
Yeah.
more people moving into the region.
Well, it's not just about more people. It's about when and how those populations grew.
Okay, so like waves of migration.
Exactly. They use statistical analysis to look at the mtDNA data. And what they found suggests that there were likely multiple periods of population growth in Jammu and Kashmir.
Huh, interesting. And do they have any ideas about when these waves might have occurred?
They do. They found evidence of a significant expansion after the last glacial maximum.
Oh, wow. So like right after the last ice age ended.
Exactly. That's a period when we see major shifts in human populations all over the world.
Right. People were moving around, finding new lands to settle.
Exactly. And the researchers proposed that Jammu and Kashmir may have been particularly attractive during this time.
Because of its location.
Well, not just the location.
Yeah.
Think about what was happening around that time. The ice was receding. New lands were opening up.
Oh, right. And people were starting to develop agriculture.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Jammu and Kashmir, with its fertile valleys and diverse landscapes, might have been seen as a prime spot to settle down.
It makes sense. It's like the perfect blend of resources and opportunity.
Right. And the mtDNA data supports this idea of a population boom around that time.
That's really cool. So we're talking about a period of major change, not just in terms of climate, but also in how humans were interacting with their environment and each other.
Precisely. It's like a snapshot of a pivotal moment in human history.
And it's all preserved in the genes of the people who live in Jammu and Kashmir today.
Exactly. It's like a living record of our shared past.
This is incredible stuff, and it really highlights the importance of studying these often overlooked regions.
I completely agree. Places like Jammu and Kashmir hold so much potential for understanding the complexities of human history.
It's like we've been focusing on the main chapters of the story,
Yeah.
but we're missing out on all the fascinating details in the footnotes.
Exactly. And those footnotes can completely change your understanding of the narrative.
And in this case, those footnotes are telling us that the story of human migration is far more intricate and dynamic than we previously thought.
And don't forget, those footnotes also tell us that women played a crucial role in shaping that story.
Absolutely. So we've talked about population expansion, but what about those coalescence ages? You mentioned earlier that they don't always match up with what we'd expect.
Right, so the coalescence age, remember, is that estimate of when a lineage traces back to a common ancestor.
Okay, got it.
And what's fascinating is that for some of the non-Indian haplogroups in Jammu and Kashmir, Those coalescence ages are older than we would anticipate.
Older, so like they diverged earlier than we thought.
Exactly. And that raises some really interesting questions about the origins and movements of these lineages.
Okay, give me an example.
Take haplogroup RAO. It's typically associated with West Eurasia.
Okay.
But the estimated coalescence age for RAA in Jammu and Kashmir suggests that it might have branched off earlier than its supposed arrival in Europe.
So are you saying that some of these lineages might have originated in Jammu and Kashmir and then spread to other parts of the world?
It's a possibility that the researchers are exploring. It challenges the traditional view of migration as a one-way flow from west to east.
Right. So instead of just being a recipient of genes and cultures, Jammu and Kashmir could have been a source as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It flips the script on how we think about these ancient migrations.
That's mind-blowing. It's like the region was a hub, not just for the exchange of goods and ideas, but also for the evolution and dispersal of human lineages.
And it makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden in the genetic makeup of the people who live there.
This is incredible stuff. It really opens up our imagination to the possibilities of what we might discover about our ancient past.
And it highlights how much more we have to learn.
It makes you realize that history isn't just a fixed set of facts. It's an ever-evolving story with new chapters being written all the time.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Right.
There's always something new to uncover.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of ancient human migration in Jammu and Kashmir.
It's been quite a journey, right?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground from those novel subhaplogroups
Right.
to population expansion and even challenging those traditional narratives about male-dominated migrations.
And that's really one of the most important takeaways from this study.
Yeah, we keep coming back to that point, and it really highlights how much we still have to learn about the role of women in shaping our history.
Absolutely. For a long time, the focus has been on the male side of the story.
Right, the warriors and the conquerors.
Exactly. But this research shows us that women were active participants in these migrations too.
And not just as passive followers.
Right? They were making choices about where to go, when to move, and who to connect with.
And those choices are reflected in the genetic diversity we see today.
It's really quite remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what those ancient women's lives were like.
Right. What motivated them to leave their homes to journey to unknown lands?
To face challenges and build new lives.
And to contribute to the rich tapestry of cultures that we see in Jammu and Kashmir today.
It's a powerful reminder that history is made up of individual stories, not just grand narratives.
And that those individual stories can have a profound impact on the course of human events.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive, and I think it's safe to say that we've only scratched the surface of what there is to discover about Jammu and Kashmir and ancient human migration as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's still so much more to explore, so many more questions to ask.
Yeah, and I, for one, am excited to see what future research reveals about this fascinating region and the people who have called it home for millennia.
Me too. It's a reminder that the past is never truly past.
It's always there shaping who we are and where we're going.
And sometimes it just takes a little digging, a little deep diving to uncover those hidden connections that link us to our ancestors and to each other.
Well said. So until next time, happy deep diving, everyone.